Welcome to the latest episode of Community Association Car Chat with David and Steve. Unfortunately, as you can see on the screen today, Steve's not with us. He just had a baby and he's got bigger matters at hand than recording this live. So I'll be flying solo today. Hopefully I don't mess it up too much. Now we have with us today a very, very, very special guest, as Steve likes to say. It is Greg Vinogradsky. He's an attorney at Callahan and Fusco. Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'm not offended that Steve's not here, by the way. But so I'm an attorney at Callahan and Fusco. We represent community associations, right? General counsel, transition, and we also do the insurance defense side of things for community associations. So, God forbid, if you ever have a claim and a manager picks up the phone and calls their insurance company, the insurance company will hopefully assign our firm to represent them through that case.
All right. So now switching gear a little bit on this is, we're right into the beginning of spring. Everybody's enjoying the weather changing. And one thing that's happening in community association and for homeowners is we're getting a whole lot of home improvement projects done. Now, what should managers keep in mind regarding the contracts that they sign with the service providers?
Yeah, so the name of the game, I think, for everyone really across the board, right, is risk mitigation, risk transfer, right? Those are the things that managers, attorneys, board members try to do with just about everything on a day-to-day basis running their association. So this is really no different. So what can they do, right? Well, you have to make sure that, the association is preparing their own contract, handling a lot of these types of cases, preparing the contracts for the associations. I see all the time where associations get so excited about a bid or they want to move forward with a project, they don't take the time to contact the attorney to have them draft the contract actually properly, right? So that means having not just maybe the association's attorney review it, maybe getting the engineer on board to actually review the contract and the scope of work as well to make sure it's appropriate and will actually accomplish what the association tries to do. So, you try to spend a little money up front to save a whole lot more in the long run. You can also get insurance declaration sheets from the vendors, right? That's another thing. I see all the time where, we got the certificate of insurance, right? So we're good. We can move forward. Well, the certificate of insurance doesn't do anything, right? It's just something that the broker drafts up and they hand to the association to say that they're insured. But if you get the actual declaration sheet from the carrier, I think you'll see what actual coverage looks like and whether it's appropriate coverage. So those are all just, quick tips on what to definitely look for as you're starting to move forward with some of these pretty costly improvement projects.
That's a very important thing, and I agree 100%. We have to keep in mind that you want to transfer the risk, but who else wants to transfer the risk? The contractors and their brokers doing their due diligence are trying to transfer the risk away from the contractor towards the client. And in that case, it's your community association. So get your attorney involved 100%. Make sure that they have their eyes on these contracts. Now, can you give us a little bit of an example of how can verbiage in a contract prevent the actual proper risk transfer that we're trying to achieve?
Yeah. So, I see it all the time in situations. I just got a case actually. It was a slip and fall on snow and ice where the vendor actually had in their proposal that the association has to indemnify them, right, for any slip and falls. So they kind of try to bring it the other way around. Where the association is always the one that tries to transfer the risk because, right, they're just a corporation that hires these entities to perform the work. They're not shoveling anything, right? So they're just relying on their experts to actually provide the work and their professionals to provide the work for them. So examples, just like if you see in your contract that the association agrees to indemnify, right? That right there is a red flag. Why is the association agreeing to indemnify anything? And you have to look at it like it's always going to be a fight between the insurance companies, right? And whose insurance company is going to be on the hook for it? And why is the association's insurance company potentially going to have to cover the snow contractor's insurance company? All of those things you'll see later on when you go to renew and you see your premiums. Maybe you didn't think, that contract, maybe you thought the contract was proper at the time, but maybe not now when you see the premium go up because you have a claim and you have to pay out for the snow contractor.
Very true. Very true. Now, as projects are being completed throughout the season, how important are the inspections throughout the process?
Yeah. So they are obviously incredibly important, right? They're not just done by the managers, right? They should be done by the engineer if the project warrants that type of oversight. A typical repaving project may require an engineer to look through and make sure everything is done properly. But you want to make sure that you're doing it at the proper time, right? So you're not just doing it at the end. You're doing it when things are there that you can see. So if you're doing your repaving or your roofing, you want to take a look at what's going on just as the project finishes that first phase before it gets covered up, right, with the final top coat and seal coat, because you may not be able to identify the issue until years down the road, and you may not be able to have the evidence to support what you're saying unless you have that documentation. So it's not just, and this is why it's important to have the contract, because it can set those timelines out for when you're going to be inspecting. It can create times for punch lists to be completed, and it kind of lays the roadmap for everything moving forward.
Yeah, and that's crucially important, especially in big projects like you mentioned. Like roofing is a big one. Things can move very, very fast. It's not always super accessible because obviously we're talking about the roof. Weather can have an impact and pressure on getting those inspections done, but you don't want to skip it. It's crucial for the life of the for the well-being of the association in the long run. Now, you did mention something, Greg. You hinted on the responsibility of the manager. As far as that's concerned, is there any responsibility on their part too to make sure that things are being compliant with certain requirements? Let's say, for example, the ADA, the American Disability Act. Is there any requirement for the managers to pay attention to that?
So it may, depending on what the inspection is for, right? Your typical improvement project, your engineer, right, would be responsible for ensuring things are ADA compliant, right? I have situations where there's a parking lot that's being not just being redone, but being completely redesigned, right? So the engineer has to make sure that it's ADA compliant, not just with the amount of handicap parking spaces, but the size of the bumpers, right? The access, the ingress and egress points for the parking area all have to fall within certain codes and standards. I don't think anybody can ever expect the manager to know those things, right? But the manager needs to know that they need to rely and advise the board on the proper professional that needs to be engaged to perform that work properly. Again, you're going to save money in the long run if you do it right the first time. So that's all incredibly important. However, if I have seen situations where you do your regular walkthroughs, the manager will do a monthly walkthrough, a weekly walkthrough of the property, looking for raised sidewalk slabs, right? They don't know what they're looking at sometimes. And I feel like they need some education as to the size of the sidewalk slab, maybe identify what a defect really looks like. Understand if the 55 and older community, there may be different standards that apply. So really, there is some type of responsibility for the manager in those situations, and that ultimately falls on the association as well to know what they're looking for and know how to correct those issues. So it may actually fall on it depending on the project.
But that can be a little challenging because, like, let's say I'm doing my tour around my community and I realize there's like something going on with the concrete, but one may be a little bit reluctant into calling a business partner right away or a contractor to get an analysis because they may feel that they're going to be sold. Maybe it's already tight on the budget. Things are already allocated and are like, well, you don't want to open a whole kind of worm. What should you do if you see something that is or might be out of compliance?
So all of this comes back to having a plan initially, right? You need to know how you're measuring certain things. Are you measuring a sidewalk slab consistently through the community? Are you communicating with the board as to what you're looking for, right? So everybody knows the expectation when you go in and you keep a uniform policy. I've had a lot of cases where there's depositions or move forward and they always ask the same questions, right? For a property manager, what standards do you use to identify a defect, right? And 9 out of 10 times, the manager will say, well, I don't have any standard particularly, right? I just go and I just kind of eyeball it. And so, that it increases the association's exposure to liability, right? Which is what we're all trying to avoid here. So just having that plan initially. And yes, calling an engineer might not always be appropriate. Calling a business partner might not always be appropriate, but at least maybe initially developing a plan with that business partner or with that engineer or whoever to be able to identify things and have them call out when something is necessary.
Very cool. Now, I hope everybody's ready for the 2 minutes of free legal advice here on Community Association Car Chat. Quick question for you, Greg. What is tort immunity? Can you talk to us about this for a minute?
Yeah, tort immunity is one of my favorite topics because it's so obvious for an association to do it, but most associations can't get the 2/3 approval needed or don't even try to get it. Tort immunity is so specific to New Jersey. I'm not even aware of any other areas that have it, but basically an association, right, cannot be sued by a unit owner for ordinary negligence that causes personal injury. So imagine all of your association's trip and fall, slip and fall cases going away, right? And not having to worry about it. Or if you worry about it, it's only brought for gross negligence, right? Which is a very high threshold to have. Just imagine that world that you could live in, right? And associations, for whatever reason, are reluctant, I think, to engage in trying to engage their community to have that approved. But again, it's an incredibly useful tool for an association to use to hopefully reduce their premiums.
Yeah, because sometimes residents may feel like they're going to give up their right to sue the association should the board fail to act accordingly to what they should be doing to respond to their fiduciary duty. Maybe we talked about sidewalk. Maybe they're not doing some proper repair and it is causing an accident that worries they can't sue. But in that case, it would be potentially falling under the negligence of the board. So they could still have a case, correct?
Yeah, so you can sue for gross negligence, right? Which is usually it's a high standard, right? It's an overt act. So I know people are falling on this. I like people falling. I'm not going to fix it, right? That's maybe the gross negligence standard that we can use. But yes, if your association is maybe breaching their fiduciary duty, you can still maintain a cause of action for that, but not for a personal injury claim caused by regular negligence.
Yeah. So let's say I'm drunk. I'm walking out of my house. I fall flat on the ground and I decide to sue the association. That's not going to fly.
Right. And it doesn't get let out the snow contractors, right, or the landscapers or another vendor from the association, just the association. So you can still have a claim against the water company for not closing the irrigation box or things like that. You can still maintain those causes of action, just not against the association. So unit owners are not suing the association that they live in, which to me is always good.
So we're not technically diminishing the rights of the unit owner.
Just against the association for ordinary negligence. Right.
Perfect. Well, thanks for clarifying that. As you said, it's a little bit New Jersey specific, but we know some of our audience pay attention to that. So now let's go on to a little bit of the fun segment, get to know you just a little bit better. I have just a few questions, rapid fire. Just don't think too hard about it. But tell us, what is your favorite kind of breakfast cereal?
Lucky Charms, just the marshmallows.
Okay. Well, that's the healthy part, allegedly.
Clearly, yeah.
Are you usually the guy that's early or late?
When you have a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old, you're always early.
All right. Well, yeah, I expected the other one because
I'm running. I'm running.
All right. So now, what is one household chore that you have never done?
I do a lot. I'm very proud of myself. I never mopped the floor.
All right. Well, that's one.
Yeah.
Maybe you can put it on your honey-do list for this weekend.
No, I'm not going to show my wife this now. Okay.
Yeah. All right. No problem. So what is the one thing that annoys you the most when you're at the restaurant?
When other people are complaining about something at a restaurant. Not that I'm with the other table. They're complaining about the wait times or something. That annoys me.
All right. So now, final question. We just finished a couple of months ago the Winter Olympics. What was your favorite event?
The closing ceremonies.
Oh, all right. I was hoping you would say curling. But now, before we let you go, can you give us a little plug for whatever you want? We'll give you 10 seconds. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. So, you'll usually see me at a CAI New Jersey event. I'm on the business partner committee. So, always, just come through. I have nothing specific to plug. Just come by, say hi. If you mention this video, Dave will buy you a drink. So it works out.
I will.
Yeah. So hope to see you around.
Sounds good. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Greg. In the meantime, we hope to see you at our next in-person event. If not, don't hesitate to reach out to Greg or myself. May you have any questions regarding legal advice for your association or any questions regarding your insurability. I would be glad to help you out. Now, we'll see you next time on the next episode of Community Association Call Chat.